Adam, welcome back to Build Your Authority.
Joe Pardavia, Build Your Authority, episode 6.
Wow. Adam, you have got it, your A game going today. Today on episode 6, it's about PR. And Adam, you had a great little line at the end of the last episode about PR that most people won't believe how cool you are, but they'll believe someone else telling them how cool you are. Just reiterate that one more time.
Yeah, people don't believe what you say about yourself, but they sure do believe what other people say about you. And if there's nothing else that sells the value of PR, it would be that statement.
I love that. And to tell us more about it is someone who's been doing this for quite a while. Her name is Terry Stanton. She's a senior PR manager at Advantage. Terry, welcome to Build Your Authority.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so happy I had that extra cup of coffee today to keep up with the enthusiasm level here.
Now, we are not messing around, Terry. And so before we get started, we always like to show receipts. And when we have folks on and share, like, you know, how they got here and how they developed these skills. And I know you've done a lot in the world of media when it comes to television and PR. But if you could just give us like the quick little Terry Stanton origin story to set the mood here today.
Wow. Okay, so let's see how far back we need to put our TARDIS in gear here. So, short story. Started in broadcasting as an anchor, reporter, producer, jack of all trades there. Moved into corporate video production. Then I stopped and had kids for a bit, which was an amazing thing. And when I came back into it, I got into search engine optimization, which was a new thing at that time. And so I learned how to write content. I wrote so much content for clients who were just looking for those SEO hits back when it was, baby SEO, trying to figure it out. Got into e-commerce marketing and writing, working. So the theme here is communications, writing, words, because then that transitioned me into public relations. And this is where I really feel like I can call this place home, because it's where I get to use everything that I learned in all of my other roles and put them all together here for some really meaningful results.
Yeah, Joe, one thing I'll say about Terry is that all of that experience that she shared has made her one of the best PR professionals I've met. And without all of that, without the SEO, without the broadcast journalism, her being the anchor, without the corporate marketing and storytelling experience, all of those things have shaped her today to be able to do what she does so well. Kudos obviously to Terry, but it also, for all of our listeners and all of our viewers, public relations is kind of this mystical thing that's hidden in this box. And they say, well, I want PR, like I want media, but they have no idea what their message is. They have no idea how their message gets positioned to make a journalist or a reporter have any interest in it. And then if they're successful in getting the media interested, then of course they have no idea how to deliver an interview. So what Terry does and what PR professionals around the globe do, and this is why they're so important, is they not only demystify it, but then they prepare the client to be able to hit it out of the park, right? Because one thing that Terry will tell you is that if you screw up once, maybe twice, the news media, it's a small fraternity and sorority, and they talk to each other. And so if you get labeled as a bad guest or as a bad source, you're not going to get as many phone calls in the future, if any at all.
Absolutely. One of the key words in there earlier was trust. And having the media being able to trust, number one, that you're going to show up, that you're going to make yourself available, that you're going to deliver what we as PR professionals, being the conduit toward the media, we say that you're going to be available and you make yourself available. But then, two, is you're able to deliver the goods. You're able to talk about and tell the story and create that narrative that we have promised you're going to be able to create. one thing that we always remember on our side here is we have two sets of people that we have to actively engage and make happy. One set is our member. The other set is the journalist, because the journalist has, what is their agenda? Their agenda is to answer questions and to help solve problems for their readers, for their viewers, for their listeners. So if we have a member that can help that that reporter tell that story, then we've solved a problem for the reporter, who can then go and help solve problems for their listeners and viewers and readers. So it's a beautiful ecosystem that works well. On the other hand, if we promise that we're going to be able to help you with a story, but maybe come in with our own agenda of wanting to promote something different, then that's almost a bait and switch. And so we would never be called back to help that reporter again. And like you say, Adam, it is a small world, and that the word gets out.
Yes. So I want to start, Terry, with asking you this question about this big fallacy. And the fallacy that I see is most CEOs, entrepreneurs, leaders that want PR, right? I mean, they all want coverage, and they have something that they want to talk about. Sometimes it's themselves, sometimes it's their business, but they have an agenda. They have something that they want to promote. And the biggest fallacy is that these executives and leaders think that the media wants to talk about what it is that they want to promote. And they become extremely disappointed extremely quickly when either A, their pitch gets no response whatsoever, or the topic that the media actually wants to talk to them about is not what their agenda is. So maybe just start kind of with some expectation setting of, hey, if you're a business leader and you want to build your authority with public relations, what are kind of some of the base rules of the road that they need to know about?
Yeah, boy, that's that's loaded right there. The way I'll start answering that is by saying, all of those people that we know that are the Elon Musks of the world, the Sanjay Guptas of the world, all of these people who have that household name factor and recognition, they didn't start having that name factor and recognition, right? They started at the bottom of the barrel. They started, if you see somebody right now, or there's a name that you're reading like, I'm starting to recognize this person's name as an expert in this field. That didn't mean that PR campaign started 2 months before that. That campaign started 10 years before that, for the most part. There is so much legwork, so much groundwork that has to be laid, because one of the first things that you're doing is you're establishing who you are and your authority to talk about what you say that you're going to talk about. You have to bring those receipts. They have to see that, yes, absolutely, I can see that this person was quoted in maybe this small publication over here and this small publication, and they did an interview with this radio show or this small podcast or a local television station. All of those activities start to build up in a media resume. Once that media resume becomes more robust, then you're able to hit some of those larger targets that you want. And maybe not just as somebody who is answering, one of 5 people who's answering a question, but maybe it could be something that's targeted about you or that person, becoming that thought leader in that particular field. But to do that, you don't just say, I've written a book, or I have produced X, Y, or Z. This is my product, and now I am ready to tell the world all about it. The world's not ready to hear from you yet, because you haven't established who you are yet. And that's where that third-party endorsement comes in. But again, all that legwork that goes into it, that can take years.
And maybe also talk about this whole idea that what you want to talk about is likely not what the media wants to talk about, and bridging that gap.
Sometimes the stars align, and sometimes you do have an opportunity to speak about your subject matter to a reporter who is writing a story just about that subject matter, and they're happy to let you steer. But that's not usually the case, because usually what happens is a reporter is given a story assignment by an assignment editor or producer or some other editor, and that reporter has to go and find the specifics of that story, and you might be able to talk about a topic over here. Let's say, it's trees, and your specialty that you want to talk about are pine trees, but your reporter is writing a story about, I don't know, oak trees. You may try to steer that back to the pine tree, but the reporter is going, that's great. I want to talk about oak trees. You have to be willing to talk about oak trees. You have to be prepared to talk about and weave a very interesting story for this reporter about the type of tree that they want to talk about. I know we kind of got into horticulture or something, but I hope that explains that.
Yeah, that's very, very important. So obviously there's this great divide of what the client wants to talk about and what the media is looking for. And as a journalist yourself, who was a reporter, who was building stories and talking to sources, maybe help listeners and viewers understand what is the agenda that drives the news media, right? What is it that they're trying to accomplish with stories? Because I've always found that when you want to earn media, when you understand what the agenda is of your client, it helps you be better for them, which is going to allow you to get, booked and called back.
So I think it goes back to what is the question that the reporter is posing? What is the answer they're trying to uncover? So depending on what might be trending in the news, a lot, right now, of course, everything is about the election cycle. So if we can find, on our side, if we can find tie a member's topic into something that has to do with the election cycle or one of the other trending topics, then you're able to tie that message into the overall message of what a reporter is looking for. But in order to get into the news, we can't force feed, and nobody can force feed into that cycle what the reporter doesn't want to write about or is not able to write about, because they're given an assignment. Again, there's an assignment editor who says, you are going to write about the oak trees today. Pine trees, that's a great story, but I'm not interested in pine trees today, maybe later. And that's something else to think about too, is even though that reporter may not be able to write about that specific topic that you want to write about now, right, that you want to talk about, if you are able to give them what they need so that they can write about the oak trees, when they're ready to write about pine trees, they're going to come back to you. They're going to remember that you were able to deliver to them what they actually needed, the answers that they were looking for. And then when they're asking another question that might be closer to what it is that you actually want to talk about, they will remember you.
So the word pitch is very important in your world, Terry Stanton. For most folks, it's not a thing, it's baseball. But pitching is something that you do, and that's your expertise. And one of the things that we didn't discuss here about these journalists that we're talking about, it's a crazy world. The media landscape is crazy. So one reporter may be working on 10 different stories at once. So it's a publicist or PR person's job to make it as easy as possible to sell that pitch. So tell us about the pitching process and taking these folks, again, going back to building your authority, to helping them sell themselves to a journalist and how you pitch that person.
So we have a lot of different pitches that we use. If we have an author, of course, one of the big pitches that we do are book pitches, because we would love as many people as possible to know that this book is out there, this book exists, this is what it's about. If somebody can write a review about it or say, I need that subject matter expertise from that person who wrote that book, they're going to come to us to talk to that author. So that's one of the pitches that we do. The other pitch that we do, and this is, I think, one that we do more frequently, is what we in-house call a source pitch. And what that means is we're tying our expert into trending news topics. for example, if there was a story that came out about something in the medical field, gaslighting by doctors. So this story broke, and we happened to have doctors on in PR that we were pitching. So we pitched that story and said this story was just written about. If the New York Times writes about it, you're going to likely see the Washington Post write about it. You're going to likely see, some of the healthcare trades write about it. It's a ripple effect. USA Today, it becomes a ripple effect. So what we do then is we reach out to those reporters, the healthcare reporters in the other papers who might be going, okay, well, now I've got an assignment because I have to go write a story that's similar to this or that discusses this, but I'm looking for my own source. So that's when we pitch our expert to those reporters. If you're writing about this story that happens to be trending right now, we have somebody that you can talk to who has an expertise in that particular topic. And so that's been a really successful avenue for us to be able to get our members into the media that way.
And no placement is too small, we should remind folks, because one thing that I often joke about is the media landscape, it's a copycat league. Someone will happily write about someone if they see it somewhere else. So tell us about the importance of not just being placed in the Times or in a major publication, but in a local publication. That could actually have ripple effects as well, right, Terry?
Couple of things there. The first thing is that because the media landscape has changed so much, what that means is there are fewer publications that are employing those reporters. So those reporters, a lot of times our reporters that we're working with are freelancers. And so they might be writing for 10 publications. We have one reporter that we work with constantly who writes for a very, very small, very niche trade publication. But she also writes for Barron's and the Wall Street Journal. And so because we have established a relationship with her, whenever she needs somebody in that field, she goes, hey, I'm not writing for the smaller one right now, but I am writing for the bigger one. Can you help me out? And again, it's, I touched on this earlier. It's where if we were able to help her out when she's writing that small publication for a story for that small publication, she's going to remember that expert. She's going to remember that person was able to deliver for her and really liked the content that he was able to deliver for her. And then she's going to come back when she's writing for the bigger one. So yeah, absolutely.
And Terry, I have always said to people that want to build their authority, no publication is too small, meaning that, to get more media, you need media. And a lot of executives and CEOs and entrepreneurs that we work with, they want to speak. And so I'll say to them, look, the first couple dozen speeches you give, they might be for free because you need to develop your skills and you need to get speeches under your belt and have satisfied audience members that will give you a positive review. I think the same thing is true with media that, look, everybody wants the New York Times or, the Today Show or CNN or whatever it is. That's what everybody wants. But to start there, unless you're Elon Musk or Sanjay Gupta, is probably not realistic. And quite frankly, if you bomb on CNN, that's a much bigger black eye than bombing on the local CBS affiliate in your hometown.
Yeah.
And so maybe just talk about this idea that really no media is probably too small and media begets typically more media.
One thing to remember is when a reporter is Googling you, that's the first thing they're going to do is they're going to Google you, right? If they're considering you as a source, if let's say I've pitched you as a source, the first thing they're going to go do is they're going to go Google Adam Whitty. Then they're eventually going to go to the LinkedIn page and your website and all of those things too. But the first place that they're going to go is they're going to Google that name in quotation marks. They're going to see what comes up. What do you think that reporter is going to say if you say, I'm an expert, and then when they Google you, nothing comes up? There's no evidence. There's no media trail. You have to have that media trail in order to prove that you are an expert to the person who's going to write that next story. right? Your customers may know that you're an expert. The clients that you work with, the people around you, they know that you're an expert. But the media, the reporter that wants to write about you potentially doesn't know that. And we have to prove that. And you have to prove it by starting out with those smaller publications where you can get in there. A lot of times it is local, but there are, I think one of the best ways to start out is by starting out in your trade publications, because that's where you're speaking to the people. They all speak the same language, right? You absolutely have to know your stuff when you're talking to a trade. So that's proof right there that you are who you say you are, because I am an expert speaking with authority to fellow authorities. So absolutely, that proves who you are. Those are the smaller publications, but they're going to live online. And if somebody from a larger publication, the Wall Street Journal, says, I want to talk to this person, it's going to take time for them to go, wait, I can see that this person has been quoted in several publications that I know are reputable. So I know that this person knows what they're talking about. We have a member who's a really good example of that. It took a while to get this person through trade publications, through smaller hits, just a constant steady stream, almost a year of just constant pitching and just, that keep plugging away. And finally, he actually got into the Wall Street Journal and was quoted as an expert in the Wall Street Journal. And that really helped his company achieve its next funding round of its goal. So it does add up. And yes, those small publications are absolutely essential in order to get into the larger ones.
Yeah. Another rule, just as we're talking about kind of rules for people to understand with PR, as you said just a minute ago, media begets media. But the other rule that I've learned is that you have to be extremely available, and the media runs on their schedule, not your schedule. And I've actually been surprised where, you'll have a big CEO and they'll say, hey, I really want to get media, but I'm not available Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays because that's when I do my weekly executive meetings. And I travel every Friday to one of our locations. So I'm available on Thursday from 12 to 2.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one of the challenges that we find, and, for the most part, we have people who are smart and they do understand that when it's the news, and what does Ferris say? News happens fast. I mean, right? It happens fast. And so at making themselves available, for the most part, we don't have a horrible time with that, but we do have occasional people who will say, no, they have to accommodate my schedule. And that's never going to happen. Because if that were to happen, they're going to go to the next source who will be able to accommodate their schedule. One thing that I've always liked to say, too, is that if, let's say, for example, you're in the middle of an executive meeting and you say, excuse me, I have to excuse myself for 15 minutes because a member of the media needs my expertise to talk about my topic, and look at me. I feel like that's really just another star right next to your credential checkbox, right? I think it's important. I think that's never going to sound bad.
Yeah, that's a pretty good reason to have to excuse yourself from a meeting, Joe.
Right. Exactly.
We get a little inside baseball, Terry, because the words owned, paid, earned, and borrowed media is used a lot. It's very popular vernacular in the industry, but folks not in the industry may not understand those words. So owned, paid, earned, and borrowed. Terry, we don't need to do a deep dive in each of those, but can you just give a little breakdown in terms of the differences of media?
You know what? Here are the big ones that we're looking at on the PR side for us really right now. It's earned and paid.
Okay.
So earned media is exactly what I've been talking about, what we've been talking about this whole time. It's there. No money has not exchanged hands. There is no trade, nothing. This is a reporter who is looking for a source, and nobody's getting paid. What we're seeing now more in it's creeping into the PR landscape is paid opportunities. That used to be just in the purview of digital marketing. The lines are becoming blurred now. And I think part of that has to do with our with some of the tough times that some of our publications are actually facing, and they're looking for sources of revenue that can fund the earned media aspect of their business model. And so that paid opportunity that an expert might get in order to, let's say, be a contributor or to write an op-ed, it's not free anymore. So we're seeing a lot of those cross lines from the paid and the earned space. A lot of times, I've seen it out there where some agencies are guaranteeing media coverage, and they're putting earned and paid in one bucket, and you really kind of can't do that because they're two separate things. So yeah, it's really interesting to see what's happening out there right now. It's very confusing. It can be very confusing because you don't always know what you're looking at.
Yeah, and a warning and a great reason to have a PR publicist is because these pay-to-play opportunities are really just taking over podcasts. If you're watching your local television station, if you see someone sitting on a couch in the middle of the day, they probably paid $300 to get that minute spot. So be prepared, and that's why if you get a random pitch like, hey, I'd love you to appear on my podcast, first question I normally get asked when I'm booking people is, how much does this cost? What do you advise clients, Terry, when it comes up to those opportunities where, man, I don't like the idea of pay to play, but it might give you this amount of exposure in this area? What's your take personally? Because I know for us, you and I, Terry, are old school media folks, so the idea of pay to play sounds a little, gauche. But right now, it's kind of like the only way for some of these people to have an opportunity to appear on television or podcast. What's your personal take on it?
Yeah, you're right. It used to be the idea of paying to. I mean, no, you never paid to appear as an expert. But I think that it really depends on your ultimate goal. And I think that if you're looking for really, really quick hits that might have that big name attached to it, a lot of people, if they're looking at a paid placement, they may not be able to see that they're looking at a paid placement because they don't see the disclaimer that's in there because it's not written like, this is a paid placement. It's not like that, or advertisement. That's not there anymore. Some publications, to be fair, some publications are very open about that, but a lot of them are not, and it's difficult to see that. I don't necessarily think that paid is a bad thing all the time. I think that is, as long as you are able to prove that you've got the chops to get that earned media coverage as well, it can be a part of it. To me, I feel like it's part of your digital marketing effort as opposed to your PR effort. But again, that doesn't mean that it's bad. I think it can have a place in a strategy. It depends on what your ultimate goal is and how quickly you need to get there.
So, Terry, when it comes to earning media, you're going to be a guest, right? You're going to be a guest maybe on a podcast, being interviewed, or a radio show. You're going to possibly be a guest on TV. And of course, in this post-COVID world, TV interviews are being done using Zoom in your personal home versus having to go into a studio. And then, being a source could be being interviewed for a writer for a newspaper and being quoted as an expert. So how does a CEO, executive leader, how do they become really good guests that give the media what they want and are invited back?
It's by listening to the question and not giving a prepared answer. It's by understanding why you're there. You are there to help them solve a problem, call attention to a situation, help celebrate something, whatever that reason is for you to be there. You're there to help them tell a story. So if you can be a part of that storytelling process, falling in line with what it is that the message that they're trying to convey, then you're being a good guest. It's like walking into somebody's home. You wouldn't walk in and say, hey, thanks for inviting me for dinner. And by the way, I would like pork chops, mashed potatoes with some applesauce. That'd be great, when they've prepared lasagna. You don't do that. So if you're walking into somebody's house and media house, you have to be prepared to give them what they need and to, I don't know, remember what's on the menu, because it's their place. They're the ones who set the menu. You have to fall in line with whatever it is that they need. That's not saying that you're going to be just, parroting something that they want you to say. No, you're there in the first place because you've already exhibited and demonstrated some expertise, a level of expertise, so they know that you know what you're talking about. So that if you walk in and say, they tell you that they want to talk about this thing, help them out, talk about this thing. And again, that increases your chances of being invited back another time to talk about a completely different thing.
And Terry, I presume when it comes to radio and podcasts and certainly television, being really crisp and succinct in your answers is important, right? If you're rambling on and on and on, especially with television, most segments are 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes at most. There's not a lot of time for you to give a 1 minute diatribe answer to a 5-second question.
Yeah, that's where media training comes in. And having a little bit of media training under your belt, I think benefits everybody, because you never know when a microphone might be put in your face and hello, there you go, right? I do think that knowing what it is you want to talk about, and I would assume that anybody, by the time that they get to the point where they're looking for PR, they are enough of an expert to have those talking points, to have that elevator pitch. They know what it is that they want to talk about. And so if you're able to present that without the rambles, to remember why you're there. Again, why were you invited? You were invited to talk about one particular thing, and forget about the 2 and 3 and 4 other things that you came in and would love to be able to throw in there, by the way. They're not probably going to be interested in that. So if you can remember why you're in the room, but again, media training can be very important to help keep you on track. It's like, public speaking. I think for some people, public speaking is just a natural gift. For other people, it's something they have to really, really work at. It's you wouldn't want to take to a stage with 200 people in an audience if you've never done that before, right? You have to have practice, and practice does make perfect.
So, Joe, Terry is saying we should not be like presidential candidates and politicians who never answer the question that was asked and instead just go back to their talking points. That's what you're saying, Terry. We should not follow the example of the presidential candidates, correct?
Adam, I'm not going to talk about politics.
Look at politics, Adam. That's the rule. Well, let's talk about what you've seen, Terry, during the course of your career, because you started back when TVs came cable ready, and now people don't even watch broadcast TV anymore. What are some of the trends that you're seeing that PR is having an impact in? I mean, obviously, we talked a lot about this thing, but is there anything trending in a certain direction where people should be focused on, being on my local television maybe not be the most important thing that I do right now? Is there a trend that you're either seeing or steering clients towards?
So one thing to keep in mind is if somebody were to, let's say, be based out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they get an interview request from a station in Dallas, Texas, they might say, why would I want to be interviewed by a station in Dallas, Texas? Well, the reason is because that interview is online and it's streamed, and everybody will have access to it, not just the people who live and watch TV in Dallas, Texas. So that interview that is coming over your television set, it has more legs now. It's not just local television. It's online, especially if it's part of if that TV station is part of a network like a Sinclair network or something like that. So you would see that same interview potentially broadcast or streamed and available in other websites.
And as a follow-on, Terry, the reason that you shouldn't be picky about media, and we talked about this earlier, is that it's creating your digital footprint online, and it's helping with your search engine optimization. And, I say all the time, You are what Google says you are. And so if I go to Google and type in your name and there's nothing, you're a ghost. You mean nothing to me. If I go to Google and type in your name and I've got to pack a lunch because I'm going to get hungry because there's so much stuff to read about you, that's an entirely different scenario. And so, yeah, my market may be Atlanta, but if the newspaper in Portland, Oregon wants to interview me, I would be crazy to say no, because that article is now online. It is now search engine optimized. And when somebody types in my name, that's going to come up.
Absolutely. And, you know, we have had people who will say, well, I don't necessarily want to take advantage of this opportunity because I'm only looking for this opportunity. And again, they forget that there's that footprint that gets created when you do take really any opportunity. You know, one thing, we always vet opportunities before they come in. When they come in, we always vet them before we send them out to our members. So whenever they get an opportunity, it's something that we consider to be good for you and will help you achieve whatever goal it is that you have for your particular PR campaign at this time. And then we'll lead on to the next thing. Whatever your next goal is, it's still going to be there. You have that. You've done that. You can, you know, if it's an article, you can make a PDF of it. You'll always have it. If it's video, download it. You know, you're going to have that. It's something that you'll always be able to keep in that media resume.
And we should connect the books and PR as we wrap things up, Terry. And one of the things that people may notice when they're watching something online or a video is the chyron, the person's name and author of. In the world of media, there's nothing more important than author of. CEO sounds cool, founder sounds cool, but author of is a huge thing. And you mentioned earlier when he came to pitching books, they may not necessarily want to talk about your book, but they'll say, hey, you're the author of this book. Tell me about the importance of books and building that authority in the world of PR.
Well, the first thing is there's automatic content. You have so much content right now that you can pull from, and you take that content and you're repurposing it everywhere. And because you're repurposing it everywhere, you've, again, added to your digital footprint so that you're going to be able to be visible and more easily found. I have a story that I want to tell you that just happened that I just found out about today. Is we have a member who wrote a book with a very specific agenda, which was to get his professional life, his career, to that next step. He had a specific goal. And so he's like, I'm going to step back over here. I'm going to write my book. And, you know, it's a Forbes Books book. And I just spoke with him today, and he achieved that professional milestone. And I asked him, I said, did that book help you? He said, absolutely. It absolutely made him visible, and it made it so that the people that hired him said, you are who you say you are. We know what you know because it's right here in this book that you wrote. And he absolutely credits having a book with helping him achieve this huge milestone for him in his professional career. So yeah, it's not it. And you know, what happens after this, now that he's got this next thing, there's going to be a whole new slew of media opportunities for him to be able to take advantage on and to just keep building and building and building that authority.
Joe, you know, the other thing to realize is that no journalist wants to make a mistake. No journalist wants to have a bad guest on their show if they can help it. And when you are author of, it is a bit of a security blanket for the journalist that there's a much higher likelihood that you're going to be articulate, you're going to be on point, you're going to really know what you're talking about because you have the credentials of author of, insert the blank behind you. So when you have a book, it actually makes you appear to be a safer choice for a journalist as well.
That's a really good point, Adam. And one thing that I would add to that is, especially if you have that book and then you have your digital materials that support that book, that personal brand or book website that showcases that, and you build onto it with additional content, I think you're absolutely spot on.
Awesome. Her name is Terry Stanton. She's a senior PR manager at Advantage Forbes Books. Terry, if folks wanted to get a hold of you, asking more questions about the world of PR, where's the best place to start?
probably send me an email, tstanton@advantagemedia.com.
Awesome. Terry, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks. Bye.
You're right, Adam. She knows her stuff about PR.
She knows her stuff. And listen, if you want to be an authority, you talked about it, owned media, earned media, rented media. Those are the three main types of media. You've got to know how to play the earned media game. You've got to have success earning your way into other people's media. And the insights that Terry has shared are foundational to building authority with earned media.
Sweet. Adam, well, that wraps up another episode of Build Your Authority. Thanks again for the time, Adam. See you next time.